Convene this April 21st, 2022 meeting of the Centreville Town Council. If folks would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening. We will start with a review of minutes from past meetings. Start with the April 7th, 2022 budget work session minutes. Is there a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any edits required or discussion or amendments? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move into minutes from the April 7th, 2022 regular meeting of the Town Council.
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion made.
Second.
Any discussion or amendments? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, thank you. We'll move into Citizens Forum. I've got Aaron Willis on the docket here, but I'm going to have Betty Jean read the Citizens Forum statement.
Welcome to this meeting of the Centreville Town Council. This is a public meeting, and we welcome your participation. By attending, you acknowledge that this session is recorded and aired live on QAC-TV 7. During the meeting, we ask that you turn your cell phones off and hold personal conversations outside the meeting room. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The Town Council respects and appreciates your desire and right to convey your message freely, and in keeping with the dignity of proceedings, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. If questions are a part of your comments, we will refer those to the appropriate individual. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Willis,
Good evening.
how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you all for all the work you're doing. Appreciate it. I'm Aaron Willis. I'm on Front Street here in Centreville. I'm a resident. A couple comments I wanted to make this evening. One, I wanted to state that I'm in favor of the Carter Farm moving forward. There are some reservations about some of the design plans, but I'm sure those are all going to be addressed. I think the main thing I wanted to discuss or bring up is my concern about sewer allocations for the town. My understanding in general is that we have about 190 allocations in reserve left to be used. And at the same time, we also have roughly 140 allocations that have been given out that are not in use but could be used. And that our sewer capacity for the town is pretty close to 85, 87, sometimes a little over 90% as it is. And so I have some concerns that how this development is going to affect our sewer allocation, what's going to happen with the sewer treatment plant. I know there's some talk of trying to upgrade it. And so I just have some concerns about how the timing of this new development with the other allocations that are still available for people to use that aren't taxing the capacity at the moment, how all of that stuff's going to impact at the same time around the ability of our current sewer treatment to be able to handle it all. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other members of the public that would like to provide comment at this time? Thank you. Thanks. We'll move into new business, starting with a discussion of the Planning Commission public hearing on the Carter Farm growth allocation. I'm going to ask the Planning Commission Chair to come up and join us, Ms. Carol Voigt. All right. Mr. Zuella, please join us at the dais.
Help me. I need to answer some more. I'm left-handed, so. Okay.
And we'll let you take it away, and then maybe we'll fire questions at you,
Oh,
if that's all right.
I didn't know I was doing a whole presentation. Well, last night we discussed we had our public hearing regarding the growth allocation. Afterwards, and the developers were able to give us kind of an update from where we were at the concept plan stage to where they are now. It wasn't quite so formal as a formal appearance where they would have done a little bit more of a complete presentation, but enough to give us the idea of what's changed. And then we did some long discussion about really some of the key points that as a planning commission that we still have questions about and concerns about. And so I'm not sure, have they received the letter that was forwarded, or the recommendation that was forwarded?
No.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure, at what point will they receive that?
When my workload
Okay,
is.
all right.
Good answer.
Fair enough. I didn't know if there was a thing, a stage that we were at, and there was a reason, there could have been a reason for it or not. So in a nutshell, we have forwarded a favorable recommendation for the growth allocation, with there being several conditions, or a few conditions and then a few notes. Just sort of going over quickly, and actually, I printed this out and then I walked out without it, so.
And just so council is clear, this is for the Critical Area Commission growth allocation.
Right. And, okay, so the major thing that we're weighing anything against is the comp plan. And although the comp plan is currently being revised, we're working off of what's existed since 2009. So within that, there are specific mentions that we have, as it being part of the community plan, it's not our job to say whether or not we can ignore it. It's our job to say this is something according to the plan that needs to be considered. So that's why you've gotten some conditions with the recommendation that we forwarded. One being I think the largest piece would be, and this is coming pretty much directly from the comp plan, in the section of transportation infrastructure and community facilities, it addresses greenways, and specifically the Yellow Bank stream, and the language is as stated: as the undeveloped parcels along the path of the greenway are developed, the area along Yellow Bank stream should be dedicated to the town as open space. So that is part of our recommendation as a condition in granting the growth allocation. The second one is kind of circles back a little bit to another section, 170-31.6D1. So in addition to the minimum requirements of the critical area regulations, the project design shall enhance the habitat value or improve water quality in the area. For example, afforestation may exceed 15% requirement, or best management practices for stormwater management may be installed on portions of the site to remain in agricultural use. So that was something that you may have seen as an item in our minutes when we had the concept plan review. So that's sort of tagged on because, again, it's a specific part of the code that is another big piece of the critical area. And then, so the additional notes that we added were for us to be able to have a continuing dialogue between ourselves, the developer, and then ourselves and you. So we're able to sort of, at least, you know where we're coming from and some of the things that that we need to see a little bit more of. There's some things that need to get ironed out. So there are 4 additional notes. The first one is assurances that the Carter Farmhouse enters some degree of preservation agreement and Chesterfield Avenue sightline is maintained. Number 2 would be further discussion should take place regarding commercial entity of the project pertaining to location, scale, amount, and impact. Third is definition as to how the agricultural component will integrate with the residential as well as the commercial component of the project. And 4 is the Planning Commission remains concerned about the viability of sewer capacity and the state and condition of the plant itself. We want to ensure that there remains enough allocations to serve the full needs of the PUD. And that end part of it is coming from when this site plan is approved, when final site plan approval goes through, at that point in time, this is not something, the site plan isn't something that we can approve and then piecemeal the allocations together. It's got to, the town needs to guarantee that there is enough allocations for that project, so if it all went in, within that first year, then we need to be able to say we can do that. And
So then the phased sewer allocations, in the opinion of the Planning Commission,
well,
not meet the requirements of the PUD.
if you, let's see, where are we here? And pasted some things, where am I at? Where does it say? There's language in the PUD specifically that says, as part of the approval process, let me go into another document here and I'll find the language. I thought I cut and pasted it, but I didn't. Requirements and I think it's part of the approval process. Administrative procedures. Let me do preliminary site plan compliance.
While Carol looks for that, Tim, do you have Chris's memo on the things that the Critical Area Commission is looking at there? 12, I think, specific line items that there. Can you just read through just what those 12 things are in bold? You don't have to get into the details of what they are. So as the critical area considers this application for growth allocation, they will,
Sorry.
Yeah,
That's all right.
well,
That's
the-
all right.
I'm putting you on the
as-
spot. That's right there?
As far as our listing,
Okay.
we've got, what, 12 or
Yeah, I
something?
think it's 12, yeah.
That's,
All right.
yeah.
The new intensity development areas should be in limited development areas, LDA, or adjacent to existing intensely developed areas. 2, new limited development areas should be located adjacent to existing limited development areas or intensely developed areas.
and this development meets those conditions, right?
New intensely developed areas, IDAs, shall be at least 20 acres in size unless there is a contiguous, or unless they are contiguous to existing IDA or LDA or are grandfathered commercial or industrial use which existed as of the date of the original program approval. The amount of growth allocation deducted shall be the equivalent to the area of the entire parcel or parcels subject to the growth allocation request. All right, no more than half the town growth allocation may be in resource conservation areas. New intensely developed areas and limited development areas should be to minimize impact to habitat protection areas and an area in manner that optimizes benefit to water quality. New intensely developed areas should be located where they minimize their impacts to defined land use and resource conservation areas. New intensely developed areas and limited development areas in the resource conservation area should be located at least 300 feet beyond the landward edge of tidal wetlands and tidal waters. New intensely developed or limited developed areas to be resource conservation shall conform to the town program for such areas. Shall be so designated in the town zoning map and shall constitute an amendment to the program subject to review and approval by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, Town Council, and Critical Area Commission. And then the last one here is if the town is unable to use a portion of its growth allocation within or adjacent to an existing IDA or LDA, then the portion of the growth allocation which cannot be so located may be in an RCA.
So the conditions, there's two conditions that you walked through tonight, right? One of them was related to stormwater,
Correct.
and the second was related to public ownership of the open space.
Correct.
The notes that you have, do they tie back to the growth allocation question, or are they just about the project moving forward generally?
Yeah, I would think that, well, I think part of the discussion was, and without getting into drilling down into all the minutia of it, I would consider the biggest question floating out there would be the sewer capacity, the remaining allocations. I guess the question would be, why would the town grant a growth application or a growth allocation if we don't have the capacity to actually have the project completed? So,
In your experience, if you have any, I'm not sure we have a ton of critical area development that's happened here recently, but does this, process-wise, and Chip and the town attorney are welcome to chime in here, process-wise, are we cart before the horse here? I mean, do we have?
well, I have to admit the PUD designation overlay does add complexity to it. Because of that, this is not, it's a little more complicated, and there are things that are happening at the same time. There's a in the PUD language in the code, it says like this is the order in which you're going to do it, and we are following it in the order by which we're going to do it, but by which it should happen. The last growth allocation that was granted on the Carter Farm was when there was just the TND overlay, and that was much more straightforward, much easier. We didn't have the issue with remaining sewer allocations. We didn't have other criteria that were a part of the PUD. And this, what complicates this more, I think, compared to the 2015 allocation is that was just residential. So you had a defined number of units, single family, multifamily, townhouse, and that's what, that's easy math. One of the things that personally I'm concerned about is that we, at this point, the developer hasn't specifically said, at least to us, what the nature of all of this, of the commercial is going to be. In addition to that, after the site plan would be approved and it would go forward, there is an agricultural building component that isn't part of the site plan. So they can, by a different sort of process, they can come in and say, well, we need to put, we're asking to be able to put buildings onto the open space that would be used as the farm, at least as it stands now, or as it's being presented now. So the possibility exists that there could be buildings going in for packing or washing or fruit collecting or whatever that thing is, right? So that would be obviously an additional need for more allocations. Now, that's not granted by right, but that is something that within the PUD is, that language is in there, so they conceivably have the ability to do that. And again, those are just kind of these other things that you have to, I guess, bigger picture. And if we're talking about the possibility that that we may not have a fresh, shiny new wastewater treatment plant for maybe another 8 or 10 years, that's a little bit, the questions out there are kind of concerning, because it's not an easy question to answer, I guess. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the best I could do. I found the language. Okay, so this is part of the new PUD code, and I'll have to say that if you go on E-code, the updated PUD TND language is not in there, so it is a little bit. It's over in an amendment section or something like that, which I'm not as technical as some people, so I have problems finding it. But so anyway, 170-28B, Section 8 addresses sanitary facilities. No PUD plan shall be approved unless the proposed development will be served by public water and sewer disposal systems, which shall be existing at the time the plan receives final approval. So that's shall, which means must, and final approval. So that's what we're going towards. Satisfactory evidence must be furnished to the town council that the existing town sewer and water systems can handle the increased demands placed upon them by the proposed PUD and meet current health department requirements for standards of operation. So,
Based on a reading of that, is it, and neither one of us are attorneys, I don't think, but we do have an attorney here and there. Does that language, in your opinion, preclude 2/3 of this being private? You may not want to answer that question, but.
preclude the private. I don't know if that really is relevant. Sewer allocations are sewer allocations, and if what we need to give to them is, and obviously there's other parts of the sanitary facilities that would go into that.
But didn't it say served by a public sewer system?
Served by public water and sewer, and everything, regardless as to whether or not it's privately owned streets or privately owned communities, we're still talking public water and sewer facilities. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that when it comes down to it, Planning Commission personally hasn't heard what the amount of allocations that the developer may be asking for. And there is none of, I'm not going to say none of this is by right? So there's language that says this is what the language is written in such that it allows them to have, what they've presented so far, but that doesn't mean that they automatically get it. So I think one way that if there's, and this is where it kind of gets pushed back to you guys, is negotiating, well, if we only have so many allocations, this is either, and if you need all of this, then we can't give that to you. Negotiating how much we can give, and maybe that means that the site plan gets a little bit less complicated, or, the commercial and the amount of commercial entities might decrease. Again, I don't know what that breakdown is, but I don't think that it's 100% insurmountable if all we're talking about is whether or not we're going to have enough to do this development. And I also don't know, again, how much is left over, and if what we're doing is leaving infill development lots without the ability to build. And by infill development, I mean maybe like one lot here, one lot there. That does exist. And I believe that, again, like how that inventory works, I don't exactly know, but the allocations are also different than the use, what's coming in and out of, physically out of that plant. So there might be some additional restrictions that would happen by the nature of all of everything we've got being tied up in one development.
May I ask just a couple questions? First, thank you, Kara, and the rest of the Planning Commission. You may have said this, but I may have missed it. Just out of everything that you've mentioned this evening, any of the suggestions, the concerns that you all have raised with the developer, are they amenable to pretty much everything that was put on the table in your mind?
Are they amenable, or have they been, in other words, are they giving?
As most recent, and I know some of them are here.
Have they responded satisfactorily to everything that we've asked? No. In my opinion, no. There was, in the minutes from the December 13th meeting, there was pages long of the discussion, and there were some formal things that we asked for that were kind of put into bullet points at the end of it, but there was also a lot of discussion. And personally, I do not feel that the developer has responded with enough of a change that personally I would be satisfied. I think that
They're giving just enough to make it look like they're giving, but again, it's our town, and so we should be able to set some standards and say, what is this retail? Why is this retail? How are you going to keep retail from downtown disappearing and moving back there? How are you going to keep them all from becoming tattoo parlors because we can't get retail coming downtown? These are questions that we need to ask, and that it's a great plan. It's a great thing for the town. I think it's very interesting, but in terms of some of the plan, we're not seeing what the ideas are that they're planning on doing. I mean, one of the things about the sewer allocations that we talked about last night was if you have a restaurant, it's by table.
Yeah.
Somebody said something
By
that
seats
the
or something.
allocations are by seats or by
don't know.
something like that. Well, it's like, what if we turned all this space into just restaurant space? Now we've got way more tables or seats than we ever originally planned. So, I mean, there's no idea. It's just, we want retail here.
Yeah, as
And-
far as we know,
yeah,
it's
that-
kind of flex space in this commercial business.
Yeah.
There's no.
Isn't there a category of retail that it's in the PUD? So like, to use your example, tattoo parlor,
Tattoo parlors are not.
but not being.
So
Well,
he's saying,
again, I'm just-
downtown's going to be full of tattoo parlors because all the good retail's going
Yeah.
to go to
Well, I
Clerk.
see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
I mean, I disagree, but that's what you're saying.
Well, to that, the part of the discussion that we've had over multiple meetings is about the Maryland Main Street itself being an entity, right? So when that was created, there's a very specific zone that's drawn to indicate where the CBD is, and that is our Maryland Main Street. And one of the big reasons why we felt it a good thing for the town to become a Maryland Main Street is that it allows us to, apply for grants and, and we can get assistance in different ways from, different programs and beautification, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a Main Street manager that's Hensley, that's her job. The Maryland Main Street is very clear in its purpose, and that is to revitalize downtown areas in small towns that are struggling. And I do believe that adding a commercial component to a PUD can be a good thing with the purpose of that to serve the residents of the PUD, not to bring in other people from outside of that community. I mean, that is built into the language. And so I know that it's been said that, work with the Maryland Main Street, and then it'll be a kind of partnership, and that's not something that should be happening. And another thing that I'll say is there's the the phrase agrihood, and there being a farm-to-table entity of it and a farm stand, that sounds like a farmer's market of some kind to me. And one of the big things that we did in the Maryland Main Street was, we wanted to bring people downtown, and so that is why that farmer's market was placed there, because we wanted to bring people downtown. And so when you have, that's a clear example of, if they're gonna have a farm stand out there, well, now we've already got one out on Ashley's property, or I don't know if it's still there or not. But you're pulling things, just that one example, you're pulling things outside of, or out of the downtown area. And there could be arguments made that some of these older historic buildings may not be adequate for the nature of a business that might go, that might want to come into the town. But again, the nature of the commercial of the PUD is supposed to be, so the language in the PUD says, commercial establishments of a convenience and service nature for PUD residents may be permitted. So that says for PUD residents. What we're looking at here is including the possibility of the Carter farmhouse being a restaurant, the first floor. I think we added it up, just rough math, and it was like 14,000 square feet worth of commercial space is what we're talking about here. And the massing of it for those buildings, now I think the architectural changes to the buildings, they're neat buildings. I don't think that they're neat and enough and appropriate to be placed right up against Chesterfield. And for scale, we all know about the size of what the Carter farmhouse is, right? It's not a small place. That footprint is about 1,400 square feet. And so the buildings that they have right now on the plan that are going to be parallel to Chesterfield Avenue, take the Carter farmhouse and stack 4 of them next to each other, and then put that in a line so the front of those buildings, the front facade of those, the frontage facing Chesterfield Avenue is the same setback as the house on Chesterfield Avenue that is next to it. That's what we're talking about. That's what those buildings are that's the mass of those buildings.
But these are questions of the site plan, not necessarily the growth allocation.
There are questions of the
That's my
site plan,
question.
but, and then this turn, I guess, again, it can kind of cycle back to like, well, how far into the nature of the use of this site do you want to get into, and whether or not it is connected to the growth allocation. He just read the specific criteria that needs to be weighed against, and then our job specifically to be weighing it against the comp plan and the code, and so that's,
Our job is really just to make sure you guys are informed of the decisions that are going to be there. And these were complaints. Last night we had several people come up, and I think just about everybody had a concern about the retail or the.
Just out of curiosity, we obviously care about anybody from Centreville that has comments, but out of those that had provided critical comments, Chesterfield Avenue residents, what would you say the feedback has been?
well, we didn't have any come. And I believe that moving forward, there needs to be direct contact with those residents, informing them that these meetings are happening and what this plan is looking like, and really hear from those people.
So I'm glad you said that, because one of the suggestions that I had for Rebecca, who of course is here tonight, and Ernie was, are they taking the show on the road, knocking on doors? And so the good news is I can report as one of the council members that's the sponsor of this project that has happened, is continuing to happen, and I know I have actually been taking time to knock on doors. Admittedly, most people don't have enough information to form a real powerful opinion. However, the feedback that I know I've gotten up to this point has been pretty much in favor.
Have they seen the site plans?
Those
They've
that
been
went
informed about the
to
project.
those that went to the open house, have seen a good amount of information, and then to the extent that the website has been current, a lot of them have actually looked at that. Do I think everybody has done that? No. I think there's definitely more opportunity. I do want to address, just because you said it, to the extent that, and as a sponsor, I want to make sure that I'm aware in detail. If the developer is not providing sufficient information back, then I know I would like to be helpful toward that end. I see a lot of the traffic that either comes from the Planning Commission, I've seen traffic from the developer, and this is not a criticism of the Planning Commission by any stretch, but I think we can all agree that if we were to ask for a checklist for how to do some of these types of things in this town, it's not easy to point to that document. And my understanding, quite frankly, and it's a positive thing, is that Sharon and Rebecca and others and you all may have been part of putting together a spreadsheet that actually spells out the milestones and hearings.
No.
Maybe not.
We
You
had
haven't
no
had
part in
anything?
that.
Okay. Well, I think something like that's needed, because right now, I don't have anything in front of me that says these are the specific things that are lacking.
Yeah, and can I just, admittedly, I'm having trouble following this just being like a verbal report with nothing to look at. It's just a lot happening. But if I could get an understanding of what of these conditions or these recommendations are actually related to growth allocation, and what are further down the line concerns that people might have conceptually about a site plan, because I just want to make sure that we have a process, let's follow it. And if there are concerns about site plan, there will be that point. But I don't want to get bogged down in what the retail might be and what might happen to Centreville Main Street and what might happen to whatever else, if that's not the stage we're at.
So the memo that Chris Jakubiak had written for us, that Tim just read a part of, that will get into that, and that is also a part of the recommendation that we are handing off to you. And the reason that those two conditions were attached was specifically because we're talking about critical area, the trail being inside of that, and then the stormwater, the second section, which again, meeting the minimum requirements of critical area regulations. So those are the two that
makes sense.
that are directly related to kind of.
If I could, this was part of a 3-hour meeting last night, so, and I appreciate, and I asked Cara to come and brief you because it was such a long meeting that I was, the same as you, trying to follow bits and pieces. Three things. First, the Planning Commission has forwarded a favorable recommendation for the growth allocation. The two top concerns were things I have talked to the town planner about, and that is the buffer area and the trail, and whether they remain the property of the HOA or they are deeded over to the town, because the town owns the rest of the trail, but it just wouldn't be that part. And then lastly, as Kara has talked about, is the outfall, because you're going through the critical area and making sure that's properly looked at when the plan goes forward. And then to kind of put a bow around it, if you want to you can continue conversation if you wish, was that the idea of the growth allocation being granted does in a way dovetail to the process, that if you get to a point and say, well, we really don't even have the capacity to approve this, then because when you would allow a growth allocation, the clock starts ticking with the CAC, and it goes for 3 years. That if we're not going to be at that point in 3 years, then it might not be the point in time that you want to approve the growth allocation. Now, I'll go back to the original comment. They have put forward a favorable recommendation. And then after that, we will know more this summer and this fall about the funding and wherefore and where arts, because this next Wednesday, we have our first meeting with WRA to start. So
The Critical Area Commission approval is good for 3 years, you said?
I believe that's correct. Yes, Sharon?
I think that's right.
So, and I'm glad Sharon's coming up, because I really have 4 critical questions that I think, based on everything I've heard, we all can agree, and Sharon, please comment. So short, because you hit on this, Karen, the revised language or current language. So short of final approval, what can be done based on this development that meets current regulations? What can be done based on precedent legally? Is it within the confines of our current code? And you mentioned we are operating off of the approved comprehensive plan, not the one that's in draft form. So I am curious, as a footnote, is there anything in the edited version, kind of make changes that says anything that they're proposing isn't a good idea or doesn't meet with that satisfactorily. And then finally, meets with the comfort of the developer. Just what I've seen up to this point is the developer has the tremendous amount of risk. There's definitely risk we're taking, and you've hit on some very good points. I appreciate that. Those are the 4 questions that I know I particularly, as one of the sponsors of this, am curious as to the answer. And I know you may need to be afforded more time to form an opinion on some of this.
Let me start with a little bit of background, and maybe that'll tie it all together and make things make a little bit more sense. Growth allocation is a limited resource. The town only has so much. Once you give it to a developer, to a project, to a piece of property, it's gone. You don't get it back. Now granted, the town only has so many places it can use growth allocation currently within the town limits. But because it is a limited resource and the granting of it is a discretionary approval, and it gives the town the opportunity to ask for things that maybe it couldn't in just a normal site plan by right development. So part of what is being proposed are conditions, and I think the applicants proposed about 20 conditions. The previous one had about the same, although the conditions are slightly different. And they get into topics that go beyond critical area. And that's why I think there's some, well, wait, is this a site plan issue? Is this something else? Because those conditions to growth allocation touch on a whole bunch of different topics. So that's where there's a little bit of overlap, although I agree that there are still some topics that really are more of a site plan, PUD type issue that we'll get into later. A couple other things to keep in mind. There's going to be a lot of different opportunities. We're trying to keep all these processes straight, but we've got a PUD process, we've got growth allocation process, eventually we'll have a DRA process, and they all overlap a little bit and they're intertwined, but they're separate processes, and we've got to comply with all different parts. So I think there was a question earlier about, are we getting the cart before the horse? I think we're keeping the horse and the cart in the right alignment, but it's been a struggle.
And no previous approval, guarantees any future approval.
That's correct. That's correct.
think
Just
that's
because this
important,
received approval before, not only does it not guarantee it, it's a different project, it's a different council, it's a different everything. So I agree with that completely, that it does not guarantee any approvals. So we think what the next step that makes sense in this process is, you've got the recommendation now from the Planning Commission. It would be a public hearing before this council on the growth allocation would be the next step in the process. And then, we can deal with, I don't want to overwhelm you with what our plan is moving forward after that, but that's what we envision to be the next step. I think the developer wants to, as part of one of the conditions, address the allocation issue. So that is how that would play into this growth allocation discussion. They want one of the conditions to spell out a little bit more of what that agreement might look like on allocations.
What is the mechanism for the council to address these conditions? Is it an ordinance? What is it?
Well, ultimately, there would be an ordinance that approves growth allocation. Attached to that would be a list of conditions. The way we did it before doesn't have to be the way we do it again, but what we all envisioned was those conditions will spell out the terms that will be fleshed out in more detail in a DRA in the future. So they would be kind of broad concepts that are attached as conditions, and then we flesh them out in a lot more detail in the DRA at a later point. There was
And that's sufficient detail to make parties move forward? The level of detail you just mentioned is that it'll be worked out in a DRA later? That's sufficient?
I mean, ultimately, it's up to them whether they have enough comfort level to move forward, but I think that's what they envision is, yes, that, we'd have these broad concepts and then we flesh out some details, and that's fairly standard for how developments would happen.
In that case,
you just can't get that level of detail this early on sometimes.
Right, and in that case, the DRRA would be moving in a parallel way to that growth allocation consideration, those conditions.
Yes.
Okay.
Another question that was earlier was about the timetable. It's not actually a 3 years that the Critical Area Commission imposes. The town zoning ordinance requires substantial completion of improvements, roads, infrastructure within 3 years of the grant of approval, or the growth allocation reverts. And that's what happened on the previous property. It had been granted to that property, no development happened within 3 years, and it reverted back to the town. So that's another reason why the timetable comes into play and matters for growth allocation, because you got that condition in there. So you'll have to address that in the ordinance that applies the growth allocation. Did I hit
Thank
on
you.
most of the stuff?
Since we've spent a lot of time on this, I respect people's time. Thank you all for coming in. Any final words that council might have or questions about this? You want to talk about the 19th?
So my question then would be, what can we do next with respect to a council level public hearing on the growth allocation? Are we able to move in that direction in the near future?
So
We have
we-
the recommendation from the planning commission, right? So we can.
Yeah. So we had hoped that you would do that at your next meeting and maybe prepared the ad in anticipation that that might happen.
So May, and I read,
Our next meeting, May 5th?
Yes.
because I had said in an email to council that I was recommending the following meeting, but if we're, I mean.
I don't
if
think
the-
there's enough time.
Not,
to
It's
do it
only
May
2
5th.
weeks away.
Yeah, because
It's
we have
been
to advertise it.
advertised.
Oh, it has.
The advertisement's gone in, I think.
I advertised for the planning commission public hearing. I did not
Carolyn
know.
said she was doing the other. I thought she did it.
I thought we were looking at May 19th.
I think we were looking at May 5th, but with Carolyn not here, I don't know exactly what's been put into the newspaper. We could do,
And not that it's up to the developer, I'm just curious, since one of their reps is in the room, do you guys care either way based on?
Love to get it started as soon as possible. We just want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and we all met your requirements for advertising, that's all. But we'd love to come sooner if we can.
I think it's really up to the staff. If
I can reach out to Carolyn via text and see if that advertisement's been put in. If the advertisement's not in, then I would say the 19th would be where it would fall.
I want to say I support May 19th.
I feel better about that.
The 5th is 2 weeks away. We're talking about public input here. We're talking about getting people up to speed on the project. May 19th, I think, is the day for me anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just a little concerned if an ad went out saying May 5th.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Like I said, I'll find out and I'll get back to you all soonest.
I'm pretty sure she prepared it before she left. She may have just had it ready in case you all did it, although I think it requires a 15-day, so it would have had to have been more than 2 weeks before, so it either went in or it couldn't be on the 5th anyway.
Let's be safe at 19th. My sense is, knowing Carolyn, she would have waited to hear what happened at the planning commission to say, okay, either the wheels came off the cart or we're moving forward.
Right.
And
And I volunteer as tribute to come on the 5th, and I'll hand out information to anybody that shows up, telling them it'll be on the 21st.
19th.
Nice.
Wow, tell them the wrong day.
It takes a
You
village.
can vote the third Wednesday in November too, Aaron.
Yes.
Any other questions from council?
One more thing, the ordinance that was written for the last growth allocation is ordinance 02-2015. So that's available for you to pull out and look at, and it probably might help you. Visually, it does kind of tie together everything that we're talking about, and I don't think it has to necessarily look like that every time, but that's the way that it.
Something like that is what I envision you
Yeah.
would do again.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the same findings, but an ordinance like
Right,
that.
right, and
Very
there are DRA components to it, and then parts of the community plan, being copacetic. I don't know how many C's can I put in there? Anyway, so that might help you as a visual.
Thank you.
And I
Thank you
believe
very
the
much.
council's been provided that ordinance
Okay,
at some point in the inbox.
So if I can interject, I'm with the local newspaper.
Yeah, you gotta, yeah.
Gotta be at a mic.
I'm Luke Parker with the Bay Times. I was just looking at the paper that's coming out tomorrow, and there is a hearing on the 5th. There is a public notice for it. It's in the back pages.
Thank you.
Doesn't mean we can't do a new one for the 19th and change it. obviously.
If you wanted to go on the 5th, we can go on the 5th. If you would rather more public comment and more people be more informed, we can do the 19th. We can always cancel a meeting.
I got to say, even as one of the sponsors, I think waiting until the 21st is a good idea.
The
for
19th.
all the
19.
The 19th.
Cannot get the state right. Do it on the 21st.
Saturday night.
Saturday night.
Saturday night.
I take my wife and I's weekend.
No shots and vote.
Hard to find a
For the record,
quorum.
I will not be here on the 21st.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
We'll move into ordinance 7-2022. Councilperson Kaiser, I'm going to turn this over to her to,
Yeah, thank you. So you guys have in your packets a memo from Joe Stevens about the request for a text amendment for Royal Farms in the business park. And essentially what this amendment to the code would do is expand the allowed square footage for convenience stores from 2,000 to 5,500 square feet, exempting the central business district. So you couldn't see a 5,500 square foot convenience store right here in the center of town, but out in the business park, it would be a possibility. That sums it up.
It does.
any questions at this point in time? Obviously a long way to go on this, but any questions for folks now?
No questions, but I'm in support of it, just to note.
All right, anything else?
So the next step would be to refer it to, it is a change to the zoning ordinance, it needs to be referred to the planning commission.
Is that a formal thing we have to do, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to refer it to the planning commission.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. All right, we'll move into reports of boards and commissions. Maryland Municipal League,
No report.
Economic Development.
I just want to publicly thank our Economic Development Manager, Paige Tillman. I had not had an opportunity to say this publicly yet, but she put a booklet in my inbox, Flow of the Dough, excellent document. I Googled it to see if it was something that we could order, and I don't think they print it anymore, but anyway, great information. I have alluded in one of our recent meetings that an idea that I have that will be rearing its head in early May, likely, to do what we're going to call a fireside chat on economic development. I'm actually asking the Historical Society if we could have a discussion around a fireplace at the Wright's Chance House, which I think will be kind of neat. But include, of course, the obvious folks like Paige Tillman, our Economic Development Manager, Carol DiAgostino, our Main Street Manager, Town Manager, any other council members that want to attend. The folks that were on CETA before it was disbanded, we have some real estate agents in town, and then our Economic Development Director for the county and the Chamber of Commerce President, Linda Friday. So starting to lay the foundation for that, and really just to have a discussion around where are we right now based on the town's current trajectory, what are our strengths, what are our opportunities when we look at resources from outside the town, what are some partnerships that could be on the horizon that would help us, and then kind of use this group as a launch pad from which to identify what is the form of some sort of committee like this take. Is it a vehicle of the town, something different than CETA, but a committee? Is it a privately sponsored, organized thing that we participate in as the formal end of the town? So more to come on that, but a lot of the information page in that booklet was very helpful, and I actually want to use some of that for this particular event. So more to come on that.
Thank you. Park Advisory Board.
Just one update to make sure everyone is aware the Arbor Day Celebration is the 29th, coming up next week, and kids and anyone who's interested should meet at 9:15 at Goose Landing along Millstream Park. And we will be planting 3 sycamore trees.
Wonderful. Council of Governments.
Biggest thing was Heather Tonelli, the Economic Developer Director for Queen Anne's County, was talking about available space left in Queen Anne's County for rental or buying, or whether there is none available. So she was looking at the towns to come up with a list of areas that could be developed. So she knows Centreville, so she knows what's available in Centreville. I understand that we actually have a new building going out to the business park too. so that's good. So maybe that can get filled up fast.
Yes.
So, but that was the biggest thing. That her and her assistant showed up. That's what they talked about, so.
I think we've got the planning commission bases covered on our conversation earlier, so I'll forego that and move into department heads. We'll start with the town manager.
Just a few things. Just before we came over, I sent you an email. The lights and electric have been installed at the Wharf Pavilions. And if you haven't been down to see them, they are super looking. They really did a crackerjack job. The Historical Society did give me a call, one of their members, to make sure that the Fireside chat thing was okay, that they weren't getting their toe in political waters. And I assured them that no, it was a good idea and that they were okay to do so.
Have my back.
Yeah. Then, and lastly, our finance folks have been busy with the budget, as you all know. They've done a great job with that. But we've also been asking them to dig and find things. And you go back to pre-2010, we looked at some of the EDUs and the charges for EDUs versus charges for what was actually being used as far as water. And there are some disconnects between there that are mutually exclusive. We found another $40,000 that we've been undercharging. So we're rectifying those bills going forward to say, hey, some of these larger businesses being charged for one EDU wasn't adding up. So Karen and Linda and Ashley have done a crackerjack job, and Kip has been involved in that from the DPW side. So that'll appear in the next budget. But we'll continue to dig and find and look for outcomes and efficiencies. So, and after that, I'll just, since Joe is not here this evening, he is at the training for the World Post Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights tonight. They did order that last vehicle. Moving forward, executing the budget that remains for 2022 and preparing for 2023. And I'll turn back over to the council unless there's questions.
Thank you. Town attorney?
Just real quick, I think the YMCA is ready to move forward and get permits, and one of the last things we need to do before that is to approve the PWA. So if you all are ready to receive it, we will get a resolution in the PWA in your next packet.
Great. Sounds good.
While you're here, the Cypress Street property, is that a done deal now?
Almost. We
Okay.
have, I think the order to submit to the court is on my desk.
Okay.
We have filed in court, we've been substituted as the plaintiffs, and we're ready. There's a status conference next week, so we'll let the court know where we are, but then also we're ready to submit the order.
Okay.
So hopefully soon.
Thanks.
Thank you. Finance officer?
You.
Budget season is just Friday. I know. I just wanted one comment, the low-income house or utility program assistance, we've been talking with Department of Social Services. We've had a few applicants, not as many as I was hoping for, so I want to continue to try to get the word out there for that. They haven't told us how much in funds they have received, but they did tell us that they have until September of 2023 to spend the funds. So if you're 30 days in arrears and you want to know about the program, contact us at the finance office. We'll get you the information to work with Emily, but we have a few approvals so far, so we're on the right track.
That's great.
That's all I got.
Thank you.
Public Works Director?
Just a brief update to let you know, we've got some more trees planted out to the farm and the tree buffer alongside of the road. The guys been working diligently to get them put in and everything. Of course, grass mowing season has started, so that adds more business to the schedule of things. To let you know, the I&I study got underway as far as the meters were installed last week in select manholes on the south and the north interceptor line and also on Route 18. So we're going to collect data for 4 weeks from that and see how we make out. Got my fingers crossed we get some rain in this time because that'll help show, and it's not very often you'll hear me ask for rain.
Right.
But hopefully things work out well. We'll look at the data, see what we come up with, and go from there.
I have a quick question. The Little Hut Drive, those corners, is there a projected end date on that? Or are there things that are holding that up? I've gotten
Yeah,
a couple
the
questions.
schedule, some of it was wet weather, which pushed the scheduling back on the masonry contractor to pour the concrete. So his schedule got backed up, and that's basically where we are. The majority of the work is done as far as the storm drains, that kind of stuff. It's just trying to get the concrete work done at this point, so.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Nice work at the wharf.
I'm sorry.
Here.
Nice work at the wharf.
Yeah, that's great job.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Great stuff.
Yep.
Human Resources Manager.
Good evening. I'll be brief, according to Karen. So no, just the top three things right now. Just kind of going through open enrollment planning, getting the packets and everything together for employees to review and make their decisions. Still continuing the personnel manual review, and currently I'm learning more about CDL requirements than I ever thought I would. Currently working on the new federal funding that's being offered through the workforce training initiative, and just trying to understand the state requirements and the federal regulations, and trying to get the funding for our employees. So kind of been working on that the last few days.
Are you going to have a CDL when you're done?
I hope so. That,
For the resume,
if not, I'll at least know how to go through the process in the future. I'll become an expert. So, but that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen. Town Clerk?
So Carolyn didn't leave any notes, but I personally wanted to let you all know that I did leave one sheet of paper at the very back of your paper packets tonight. It is a resignation from Patricia Cipriano on the Planning Commission. It's effective yesterday's date, so we are now down to 6, once the alternate members are given their oath to be full-time members. 6 full-time Planning Commission members. So we'll have 1 open seat and 2 open alternate seats. We're in the middle of a development process, so we need to get these seats filled. There's plenty of residents that want to give their opinion and their ideas. I'd like to see some of them apply to sit on a board or a commission and help shape this town. Other than that, water bills are due April 30th.
Hear about that?
Thank you. Council Roundtable. I'm sorry, I skipped over, as I am often want to do, the second Citizens Forum. So we will open it up to anyone who would like to present comment. 3 minutes, just state your name and address.
Hi, Rebecca Flora, actually 218 Mount Vernon Avenue, Chestertown. I just want to thank you all for your continued thoughtful deliberation around the project and the ability to have that conversation. I also want to request that there was mention in terms of the project not responding to comments. We have not had an opportunity to actually even present to Planning Commission. Again, last night was a growth allocation presentation. So I do feel that the process is complicated. I've been doing this work for over 30 years. I have never seen a process like this. It's no wonder it's confusing. I think that an opportunity to actually do a briefing where we can ensure that everyone has all of the same information at the same time would be extremely helpful, because people are getting pieces of information, and it is hard to weave together how the growth allocation relates to the PUD, relates to the DERA, and we're trying to respond to each of those things, but I feel like, a holistic briefing rather than the bits and pieces might just help everybody. I mean, we tried to do that through the open house. I feel like through the public process, that might be helpful also for everybody's benefit because the process is so complicated. So we haven't had that chance to brief Planning Commission yet on the PUD revisions. And I think for the public, and I wanted to say that here because I know QAC-TV airs this, so there's probably people listening, and to also indicate that we do keep the website very up to date. We post when there's public meetings. We have the presentations uploaded when we give them publicly. We're very committed to that, and so anything else that you feel that we can be doing, we'd love to, but I mostly just wanted to thank you all because tonight's deliberation was really well done. Thank you.
If I could tether on to what she's saying, this is our first PUD, and there was a DRA crafted for the original Chestertown development project 7 years ago. This is our first DRA, hence this is our first time through this very complicated process. So there's a period of growth, if you will, for the town because we didn't have this process before, so we're kind of, working it as we go. And it is as if you've seen her briefing before, with all the levels of approval, and there's 5 public hearings in this whole thing. My point is I want the citizens to understand that there's due diligence coming from both the developer and the town to make sure that when the decisions are made, we're not going back and saying, oh, we need to have another public hearing, we forgot to do this. So we're trying to, as she said earlier, let's cross the T's, dot the I's, and make sure we get this right as we go through.
And Rebecca, you mentioned you've been doing this 30 years, and Sharon, with the wealth of knowledge that she has, one of the greatest things that I think can come out of this project is some kind of template that we can look toward in the future. And then I really think it would be helpful if we do some kind of hot wash of just this whole experience at some point, just to say, what did we learn? What do we want to do differently in the future? What were the pain points? And just the last thing, Steve, since you are the liaison to the Planning Commission, is it possible to relay from this meeting tonight a fervent request that if there is a list of things that the developer has not yet provided to the Planning Commission, that we could just see what that list is so that we know what is outstanding? Because when I saw your face, the reaction was kind of like, I didn't know that.
We've provided everything that I'm aware
and
of.
I'm sure there are things they need answers to, and I'm sure you've done your best to answer, but if we could get that list, it probably wouldn't hurt.
It's a dialogue we haven't had a chance to have yet since we just submitted, and that wasn't what was on the agenda yesterday. So anyways, I don't want to prolong this. I appreciate everyone's time, and our door continues to be open for any additional questions. So thank you all.
Thank you. Council Roundtable, Councilperson Kaiser.
I have nothing.
Councilperson Johnson.
I have something, but I'm going to talk fast. So I just wanted to mention, Ashley also was aware of this. In fact, she brought it to my attention, the speed camera that's on Kidwell. My understanding, there was a permanently mounted, like right in front of somebody's house.
Chip's dealing with it.
So I just wanted to touch on it for anybody out there that noticed it. It's been addressed.
Not notice it.
It wasn't placed in the best spot. It's an eyesore, all of that, but I just wanted to get a footnote in on that. Things are coming along really well for First Friday. This will be the first one that Ashley is traveling, but we're going to send her a video. I want to thank the town staff for all their help and support moving into that. I know we've already said it, but I want to say it again. Hats off to the finance staff and really everybody that helped with the budget hearings, the Herculean work that went into that. As somebody that's done a lot of capital planning, I have sat through some of the most brutal budget sessions in my life, and I got to tell you, what we just went through was some of the best, in my opinion, so thank you. And then, I know you all are going to love me for this, I have a request, and I ask for unanimous consent that after we close the public session, if we could go into a very brief closed session to discuss a personnel matter that is relatively urgent, in my opinion. That's all I have.
Noted. Councilperson Anania.
Nothing to report.
Vice President Keel.
I only have one thing I see. I don't know if you had anything to do with it or a code enforcement officer, but they're cleaning the property up down to the building, the mill building.
Yes.
Yep.
Code enforcement's been out a couple times.
Yeah.
We've been talking to, we had an inspector go in, and we're looking into, and talked to the owner about having a structural engineer go in and take a look.
Yep.
Make
They
sure.
cleaned all the stuff up out back. It's all gone, so looks good down there now.
Bob's doing a crackerjack
For the
job.
building. That's it.
I'm going to yield back my time. We have a motion to go into closed session.
So moved. I'll second.
You can make it.
I'll make the motion to go into closed session. Eric can second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so
Sharon, do you have a few minutes? I think you can stick around.